You know what's funny? I spend most of my days helping businesses pick the right CRM, and the conversation almost always starts the same way. We know we need something, but everything we look at feels overwhelming. And I get it. When you're running a small business, CRM research can feel like shopping for a car when all you need is a bicycle. Salesforce feels like you need an engineering degree just to plug in, and HubSpot assumes you've got a whole marketing department at your disposal. Even the platforms that claim to be simple come loaded with features you didn't know existed and definitely don't need. That's exactly why Bigin CRM caught my attention. Here is a CRM that actually seems to understand what small businesses are going through. The moment they realize that sticky notes and Excel doesn't do the job anymore, but they are not at the level of enterprise complexity yet. That's exactly why Bigin CRM caught my eye. After watching this video, you will know exactly if Bigin CRM fulfills its promise and could become an ultimate small business CRM. I will cover who Bigin CRM is for, what use cases it covers, evaluate if user's interface is any good. I will evaluate its functionality, ease of implementation, customer support, marketplace, product quality, and many, many more aspects of Bigin CRM. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Jeff Tiley, and I am CRM consultant. And today I'm reviewing Bigin CRM. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit like to help promote this video. Let's begin. To give you a bit of context, Bigin CRM emerges from the Zoho universe, which immediately tells you something about its DNA. If you never worked with Zoho products, you should know that they have a very particular philosophy. Build comprehensive business software that's accessible to companies who cannot afford enterprise solutions but don't necessarily worry about making them very polished. Now, Zoho has been quietly building an empire of interconnected business applications for over 2 decades. While Salesforce dominated headlines and HubSpot captured startup mindshare, Zoho focused on creating an ecosystem where small and medium businesses could run their enterprise operations through integrated apps like CRM, accounting, project management, email marketing, and so on. Bigin CRM represents their attempt to distill that ecosystem thinking into something even more accessible. It's positioned as the simplest CRM within their portfolio, sitting alongside the full-featured Zoho CRM like a younger sibling who went to the community college instead of, pursuing PhD. What's interesting about Zoho as a company is their commitment to affordability without sacrificing fundamental functionality. They're not trying to be the prettiest or most intuitive. They're trying to be the most practical for businesses that need real tools but could not justify enterprise budgets, which brings me to a very important question. Who is Bigin CRM for? Imagine you're running a small business. Maybe you actually are. Maybe a consulting firm, a local service company, or a startup that's moved beyond the founder's personal network stage of customer acquisition. You've been tracking customers in Excel, sticky notes, or that informal mental system that worked fine when you had only 5 clients. You know you need to get systematic about your customer management, but when you research CRM solutions, everything feels overwhelming. Salesforce looks like it requires a computer science degree. HubSpot seems to be built for companies with dedicated marketing teams. Even simple solutions assume a level of sales process sophistication that you haven't developed yet. Now, Bigin CRM targets that exact moment of recognition when you realize you need systematic customer tracking, but you don't know where to start and cannot afford to get it wrong. It is my personal speculation, but I think the ideal Bigin CRM user is probably managing somewhere between 10 and 500 customer relationships, has a team of 1 to 10 people who need access to customer information and wants to implement basic sales process tracking without hiring consultants or spending months in configuration. They're not trying to capture enterprise clients who need complex territory management or sophisticated reporting hierarchies. They are targeting businesses where the primary CRM question is, did we follow up with that person, rather than what is our quarterly sales velocity by product line? Which brings me to my next point. What's the use case fit, or in other words, for what type of businesses Bigin is designed for? So here are criteria, or at least how I see them. First, you are transitioning from informal customer tracking like Excel, notebooks, memory, and so on, to a systematic CRM for the first time in your life. Bigin CRM provides just enough structure to organize your customer relationships without overwhelming you with options you don't understand yet. Secondly, of course, your sales process is relatively straightforward. You meet prospects, qualify them, propose solutions, and either close deals or say no. You don't need complex multi-stage nurturing campaigns or intricate approval workflows. Though you could have many stages within Begin, the point is you don't have sophisticated sales process. And third, your team needs basic collaboration around customer information. Everyone should see the same contact details, know who talked to whom, and understand what the next steps are for each opportunity. Oh, and also you want phone integration that actually works without enterprise level complexity. Begin CRM's telephony features are genuinely impressive for the price point. Which brings me probably to the most important point in this discussion, user interface. When you first log in into Bigin CRM, you are greeted with a refreshingly clean pipeline view. All your opportunities split by stage in that familiar Kanban style layout that's become the standard across the industry. It's immediately recognizable if you've used any modern CRM system and actually any other systems like Notion, Trello, Jira, God forbid, or something similar. What I love most about the interface is its deliberate simplicity. There is something almost zen-like about how stripped down everything feels, at least at the first glance. You've got your contacts on the left, companies, products, and that's pretty much it. No overwhelming menus, no feature bloat, just essentials. But here is what I also noticed. While working with the system, I started noticing the small friction points that accumulate over time. When I click to open a contact, let's say Ashley Collins in this example, the information doesn't organize itself into clear, digestible tiles like, we got accustomed in Salesforce or Pipedrive. Instead, everything flows together, like basic info, tags, description, related contacts, company details. It's not broken, but it lacks that visual hierarchy that helps your brain quickly parse different types of information. Secondly, what I also don't like is that Begin CRM is not using model windows like most modern software systems are doing when it comes to new record creation. Instead, they're opening windows, if you could call them windows, to the side, which adds a bit of learning curve. It's not very intuitive, and especially if you are on a bigger screen like I do, you will have to do a lot of seeking with your eyes over the screen to find elements. Normally, they should all appear at the center of the screen. That way, no matter what machine you're using, all user interface elements are more or less at the same place. You get used to them, and that makes the system easier to use. It becomes more predictable. Which brings me to the next point of my review, out-of-the-box functionality, or in other words, what Begin has to offer without any additional add-on installations. Now, Begin CRM comes with exactly what you'd expect from a modern CRM system: pipeline management, contact and company tracking, activities, calendar integration, and a dashboard. However, they have a very specific approach to when it comes to creating pipelines, which I don't necessarily understand. You can create standard pipeline for different businesses or your different processes, say B2B versus B2C sales. But then they introduced this concept of sub-pipelines. After some exploration, I realized that sub-pipelines let you reuse existing stages while creating slightly different workflows. I'm not sure if it's a genius or dumb idea. I just couldn't think of a use case where this would help instead of complicate things. Next, compliance features. The HIPAA or HIPAA and GDPR compliance are built right into it, and they are not built on top of already existing system, which is really nice. For small businesses that need to handle sensitive data, this removes a significant barrier to entry. Just FYI, a lot of systems like Salesforce have built the compliance features after they build a system, which is a bit challenging. It's not a disaster, it's not the end of the world, but what I noticed here, it's probably been designed from the very beginning. When it comes to setting up permissions, the system is extremely straightforward. You only got so many options, but this is understandable considering who is their target audience. Small businesses don't need a complex configuration. At least I personally wouldn't want it. What did impress me, though, was how easy I could integrate phone into Begin, which I already mentioned. I connected my telephony provider. I used somewhat niche service called Telltale, and within the interface, I could simply click a phone number and my system would ring. During calls, I could take notes directly in the CRM. It's the kind of seamless integration that makes you wonder why other systems make this so complicated. Which brings me to my next point, is how quickly you could get up and running, or in a more fancy terms, time to value. This is where Bigin CRM truly shines. If you know what you're doing with CRM systems, you can genuinely be up and running in a single day. The bottleneck isn't the technology in this case. It's the business decisions about how you want to structure your sales process. For example, I imported demo data using ChatGPT to help me generate realistic opportunity names, and the migration process was really straightforward. Real-time investment comes from thinking through questions like, what should we call our pipeline stages? How do we track our different types of customers? And these are strategic questions that every business needs to answer regardless of which CRM they choose. For someone completely new to CRM systems, I'd estimate maybe 2 days total, 1 day for setup and import, another day for the team to click around and get comfortable. Compare that to enterprise systems where you're looking at weeks or months of implementation, and the value proposition becomes clear, which is a great time to talk about user adoption, or in other words, how easy it is to onboard users into the system and how likely they will be using it. The simplicity of Begin CRM interface also drives its adoption story. There is genuinely very little to learn. Your team won't need extensive training sessions or reference manuals. The core functionality is intuitive enough that most people can figure it out through exploration. However, I did notice some patterns in daily usage that might create friction points, which I mentioned before. When creating tasks, for example, you have to manually type follow-up or call instead of selecting from pre-populated options. I know it's a small thing, but when you are in that flow state, moving from deal to deal, tasks to tasks, these little moments where the system doesn't anticipate your needs can, break your rhythm. In Salesforce, for example, this is realized via a hybrid field where you could either select from a list of predefined task subjects or enter your own task subject. I like it much more, to be frank. And by the way, in the Pipedrive, you just click new task and it pre-populates follow-up title of that subject for you, which is really nice. Next, the command system requires explicitly clicking save rather than just hitting command or on a Windows machine control enter. So basically you have to move with the mouse and make this extra click, which feels oddly formal for what should be quick note-taking. Again, not a deal breaker, but it's the kind of detail that separates systems from feeling intuitive from those that feel merely, functional. I'm not sure how much of a deal breaker this minor issues would become. Since I do work with a lot of different software, I can tell that this would have annoyed me to the point of frustration, and I personally would want to switch to something that is better thought out. However, in general, I think the system could get a very decent user adoption thanks to its simple and I'd say rather primitive interface, which brings me to my next point, mobile experience. Now, Begin CRM mobile app nicely complements desktop version and even expands its capabilities. I would say their app is even better than Salesforce's mobile offering. The interface translates well to mobile, maintaining clear, uncluttered feel that works on small screens. You can manage your pipeline, update deals, create tasks, and access contact information without feeling like you are using a cramped desktop interface. One feature that caught my attention was handwritten note scanning. The app can convert handwritten notes to text, though the accuracy varies dramatically depending on accuracy of your handwriting. With printed text, it works remarkably well. With my handwriting, well, let's say the feature has room for improvement. However, again, I think on iPhone that app uses Apple Intelligence feature, which is beyond Begin's scope, and probably, fingers to be pointed at Apple if something is not working well in this particular area. Anyway, the mobile experience does inherit some of the desktop's version quirks. Occasionally, buttons become unresponsive, requiring you to close and reopen the app. It's not frequent enough to be unusable, but it's noticeable enough to mention that in this video. What I appreciate about the mobile app, though, is that it doesn't try to cram every desktop feature into a phone interface. Instead, it focuses on the core activities that sales team usually need when they're away from their computers, like checking pipeline status, updating deal stages, and capturing, quick notes and tasks. Which brings me to my next point, documentation. A very important aspect when I look at any software product is its documentation. It's a very good measurement of the level of support of the product. Well, for Bigin CRM, documentation exists, but it's very much what you'd expect from a simplified system, basic, functional, and focused on the most common use cases. Most of the documentation reads like an extensive FAQ, which makes sense given the target audience. You will find answers to questions like, how do I customize my pipeline and can I integrate the Google Calendar? The answers are usually straightforward and include screenshots. What's interesting is browsing through the question categories. The numbers tell a bit of a story. For example, Getting Started has 4 articles, Explore Settings has 13, but Mobile App FAQ has 683 entries. That's a massive disparity that suggests either the mobile app has significantly more complexity, issues, or is being heavily used rather than desktop version, or users are simply more confused about mobile functionality. Now, from a technical standpoint, the API documentation exists, but it's sparse. If you're planning to build custom integrations or do anything more sophisticated than standard use cases, you will probably find yourself filling in the gaps through trial and error like we did with Zoho CRM in the past. For a system positioned as a simple and straightforward, that's probably acceptable. Most users won't need extensive technical documentation. For me personally, as someone who's implemented dozens of CRM systems, I don't actually need extensive user documentation for basic functionality. What I need is clarity about limitations, edge cases, and integration capabilities. Bigin CRM's documentation covers the basics adequately-ish, but don't expect deep dives into complex scenarios, which may become an issue if you're looking to develop complex customizations. But again, considering target audience, I don't think this is an issue, which brings me to customer support of Bigin. Now, this is where I have to draw my broader experience with Zoho as a company. And honestly, it's not particularly encouraging. My interaction with Zoho support over the years have followed a consistent pattern. They respond to tickets quite promptly, but there is often a disconnect between acknowledging your question and actually solving your problem. It's like having a conversation with someone who's technically answering your questions, but completely missing the underlying issue you're trying to resolve. They will provide steps to reproduce a problem you've already reproduced or suggest solutions that do not address the root cause you've identified. What's particularly frustrating when you encounter what seems like a clear bug, and trust me, you will encounter bugs with Zoho, the support response tends to focus on workarounds rather than fixes. It is as if the customer support team is trained to close tickets rather than resolve actual problems. I haven't tested Bigin CRM specific support channels extensively, but based on the broader Zoho ecosystem and what I've read in various Reddit threads and review sites, the pattern seems consistent across their products. Multiple users report similar experiences, responsive but not particularly helpful. For basic questions that can be answered through documentation, you've probably fine, but for anything requiring actual problem solving or bug resolution, I recommend having realistic expectations about what support can actually accomplish for you. Which brings me to an alternative ways of solving problems, and it's community. And let's be honest about this. There isn't really a community to speak of. I've spent time exploring their community forums, and what I found was essentially a ghost town with occasional, tumbleweeds blowing through. The latest discussion I could find was a month ago at the time of my review of this, when I was filming this video. The pattern seems to be maybe once every month or so, someone posts a question and then silence. Most of the community activity consists of announcements from Zoho's development team posting to an audience that doesn't seem to be there. This is in stark contrast to systems like HubSpot or even Salesforce, where you will find active communities sharing tips, workarounds, and best practices. Within Bigin CRM, you are essentially on your own when it comes to learning from other users' experiences. The learning resources situation is similarly sparse. There are no comprehensive video tutorials, no third-party training courses, no user groups or meetups. It's a grab the system and figure it out yourself approach, which aligns with the overall philosophy of simplicity, but can leave you feeling, isolated when you do encounter challenges. In some ways, this makes sense given the target audience. If you're a small business just starting with CRM, you probably don't need a vast library of advanced tutorials or thriving community of power users. You need something that works out of the box with, minimal fuss. But it does mean that as your needs evolve or you encounter edge cases, you will be largely dependent on official support channels or your own problem-solving abilities. There is no crowdsourced wisdom to tap into, no community-generated workarounds for common issues, no shared best practices from similar businesses. For a starter CRM, this might be acceptable. For anything beyond basic usage, the lack of community resources becomes a real limitation that you will need to factor into your decision-making process, which is a great time to dive a bit deeper and talk about technical implementation of Bigin CRM. And let's start with integrations. Here is where I nearly lost my mind, and it perfectly illustrates the Zoho approach to software development. I wanted to create a simple automation, website contact form, Slack notification, Google Sheets backup, and then, Bigin CRM deal creation. That's my flow that I wanted to replicate. Straightforward stuff that any modern CRM should easily handle. I opened up Make.com, one of the most popular automation platforms, and started building the workflow. I could create companies, I could create contacts, but when I looked for create a deal, it wasn't there. Instead, I found something called create pipeline. Now, if you have worked with CRMs before, you know that a pipeline is the overall sales process structure, while a deal is an individual opportunity within that pipeline. It's like the difference between sales process and a specific sale. But apparently, whoever built the Bigin CRM integration with Make.com decided that these terms were interchangeable. After some, let's say, frustrated clicking around during my recording, I discovered that create pipeline actually does create a deal. It's just named completely wrong. This perfectly encapsulates what I call the Zoho developer disconnect. It feels like the people building integrations are completely disconnected from real life and their users. They don't have a clue about what they are building. And it's not only about integration, it's about Zoho products in whole. However, once you decode their unusual naming conventions, the integration actually works quite well. The email integration in particular impressed me. You get read receipts, you got email tracking, and shared inbox functionality that lets team collaborate without sharing login credentials. It's actually, if not better, then at least the same level as Salesforce's email integration, which is saying something. The phone integration deserves special mention. I connected my telephony, Telltale link to them in the description below, and yes, that's an affiliate link. And within minutes, I could click phone numbers in the interface and have my system automatically dial. Now, during calls, I could take notes directly in the CRM, and call recordings were automatically attached to the contact record. This level of seamless integration usually requires pretty expensive enterprise setups. However, finding those call notes later required archaeological skills. They are buried deep into the activities section rather than being prominently displayed where you would logically expect them, which again is a testament to the Zoho company's developers. Which brings me to discussing ecosystem of Bigin, which means availability of consultants and different business applications. The Bigin ecosystem is essentially the broader Zoho universe, which is both a blessing and a curse. On the positive side, you get access to an incredibly comprehensive suite of business applications like invoicing, which is Zoho Books, project management like Zoho Projects, email marketing like Zoho Campaigns, forms like Zoho Forms, digital signatures like Zoho Sign, and dozens more. But here's where it gets complicated. The Zoho ecosystem has a very specific philosophy about how business software should work, and you're essentially locked into their way of thinking. Each individual app ranges from pretty good to why did they build it that way? And you cannot easily substitute, best of breed alternatives without losing the integration benefits. When it comes to consultants and implementation partners, the Bigin CRM market is virtually non-existent. This isn't necessarily a bad thing given the system's simplicity, but it does mean you are largely on your own for anything beyond basic setup. For complex business requirements or custom integrations, you will need to either figure out yourself or potentially look at a more robust alternatives. On the positive end, Bigin is clearly built with Zoho CRM under the hood, which technically means you could migrate in a couple of clicks and get access to the vast ecosystem of Zoho CRM developers. The app marketplace is limited. Compared to platforms like Salesforce or HubSpot, most of what you will find are integrations with other Zoho products rather than third-party solutions that could extend functionality in meaningful ways. But again, it's hard to look at Bigin without keeping the fact that it's Zoho CRM in mind, which is a good time to talk about scalability, or in other words, how well the system could grow with your business. And the answer is not very straightforward. On one hand, you get exactly what you see for 4 core objects like pipelines, contacts, companies, and products, and basic functionality around them. And there is no path to grow the system as your business becomes more sophisticated. The data model is intentionally simple. Deals connect to contacts, contacts connect to companies, and that's about it. You cannot create custom objects like projects or support tickets or partner relationships. You cannot build complex workflows that span multiple business processes. You could not create sophisticated reporting hierarchies or custom dashboards that provide executive level, insights. And this isn't a criticism. It's by design. Bigin CRM is explicitly positioned as a starter CRM, and in that context, the lack of scalability makes perfect sense. The system succeeds precisely because it doesn't try to be everything to everyone. But it does mean that successful business will inevitably outgrow Bigin CRM. When that happens, you're looking at a migration to either a Zoho CRM, which is basically the full version, or a completely different platform. The good news is that the data export process should, in theory, be very straightforward, so you're not trapped. Now, before we jump to the next section, let's briefly talk about customization. Bigin CRM offers simple, fixed structure: deals, contacts, companies, and products. You can customize fields up to 50 per object and slightly tweak layouts, but you cannot create new objects or complex relationships. This keeps things easy to set up and hard to overcomplicate it, ideal for small teams just getting started. However, if your process requires custom objects or advanced modeling, you will basically hit the limit immediately, which is a great time to talk about Bigin's product quality. And this is where my enthusiasm for Bigin CRM's value proposition hits a brick wall. The system feels like it was built by different teams who never talk to each other, tested by people who have never used a CRM system, and deployed without anyone doing a final quality check. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I say I encountered bugs within minutes of starting my review. Screens that wouldn't load, buttons that didn't respond, search function that couldn't find records I knew existed. The Zoho notebook feature simply refused to open, throwing error messages in a completely empty system with maybe 70 records in total. These aren't edge cases or complex scenarios. This is basic functionality failing under normal usage conditions. I'm using Google Chrome, which is the most popular browser in the world, on a modern computer with a fast internet connection. There is no technical reason for this level of instability. And what's particularly frustrating is the unpredictability. Sometimes features work perfectly, but sometimes they don't work at all. And sometimes they work, but in an unexpected ways. You develop workarounds and defensive habits, like refreshing pages after certain actions or double-checking that data actually saved. Now, mobile app inherits many of these quality issues. Buttons randomly become unresponsive, requiring app restarts, and features that work on desktop sometimes fail on mobile for no apparent reason. From a business perspective, this level of quality creates a hidden cost. Your team spends time troubleshooting instead of selling, and you lose confidence in your data because you're never quite sure if that missing record is actually missing or just hiding behind a bug. In 2025, with the level of polish we've come to expect from business software, this feels amateur. It's the kind of quality you might accept from a free tool you found on a GitHub, and not from a commercial product that businesses depend on for revenue-critical processes. The value proposition is compelling. You get a lot of functionality for a very little money, but you pay for that saving in frustration, workarounds, and constant doubt about whether your business system is actually working correctly, which is a great time to talk about costs. Bigin CRM's pricing is one of its strongest selling points. You can start completely free and not a trial, but a full CRM for up to 500 records. Once you need more, plan starts just at $7 a month if you pay annual, or $9 a month if you pay monthly per user, with the top tier maxing out at $18 per month. This makes it accessible for any small business without hidden costs or complicated pricing schemes. The free plan is genuinely usable, and the paid plans scale logically with added features like automation, more storage, and more custom fields. There is no per contact fees, no overage charges, and no forced upsells, just clear, predictable pricing. Now, beyond subscriptions, Bigin keeps costs low by design. You don't need consultants, admins, or even trainings. Most users can get started in minutes. It's a plug-and-play CRM for small teams. However, while monetary costs are low, there are hidden productivity costs. Minor bugs, interface quirks, and limited functionality can slow down your team. A few minutes lost per users per day adds up, and over time, that can eat in your operational efficiency. For early-stage companies, these trade-offs are usually worth it. But as your business grows, those frictions may outweigh the savings. And Bigin CRM is a good enough solution that helps you get started quickly and cheaply, but it may not scale with, more complex needs. The upside is that you can test and learn with almost no financial risk and upgrade when the value of more powerful tools become obvious. Which brings me to my final point of my video. After spending a couple of days with Bigin CRM, importing real data, testing integrations, and pushing the system through daily workflows, I need to answer the question that matters most. I wouldn't want to work in Bigin CRM day to day. And it breaks my heart to say that because I can see exactly what they were trying to accomplish. Now, let me explain why this is such a conflicted response for me. On paper, Bigin CRM represents everything I believe a starter CRM should be. It's simple without being simplistic, and it's affordable. It covers the essential functionality that 90% of small businesses actually need without overwhelming them with enterprise features they will never use. But unfortunately, after 15 years of working with CRMs that actually run smoothly, I've gotten a bit spoiled. When I click something, I expect it to respond. When I search for a contact, I expect to find them if they exist. When I save a note, I expect to locate it later without playing digital archaeology. These aren't unreasonable expectations in 2025. They are basic table stakes for business software. Bigin CRM fails this fundamental reliability tests in ways that compound over time. It's not just the individual bugs, though there are plenty. It's the constant mental overhead of never quite trusting your tools. And as I said, you develop defensive habits, refreshing pages after certain actions, double-checking the data actually saved, avoiding features that feel unreliable. This creates a productivity tax that's hard to quantify but impossible to ignore. Every moment spent working around the system is a moment not spent focusing on customers, building relationships, or closing deals. In sales, momentum and flow state matters enormously, and unreliable tools are momentum killers. If I were running a bootstrapped startup with no CRM experience, Bigin CRM would be a smart way to start. It's affordable, easy to set up, and helps you understand what CRM adoption really looks like. The system's simplicity forces clarity. There is no room to overbuild, so you focus on what matters, tracking and following up with your customers. As a learning tool, it's great, but it's not built to scale. The flaws, bugs, quirks, and missing polish starts to grate once you've seen what reliable software can do. So no, I wouldn't choose to work in it long term, but for small teams testing the waters, Bigin CRM removes the usual cost and complexity barriers, and that makes it worth recommending in the right context. Just don't expect to love it. Expect to learn from it. And that's it for today, folks. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Have you ever used Bigin CRM or Zoho suite of products? Did they work well for your company? Did you like them? And make sure to let me know what CRM system you want me to get reviewed next time. Make sure to subscribe to my channel to not miss my next videos, and don't forget that link to my company website is in the description below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Peace.